What is buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Hello again, Buffer Timers. This week we're going to talk about Star Trek versus Battlestar Galactica, the 2004 edition. But before we get into that, let's go around clockwise and introduce ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
Oh, hi, I'm
If you're
Del.
gonna have me, then it's counterclockwise.
Yeah.
They'll follow directions.
Hi, I'm Del. I believe that Dean Stockwell is definitely universal glue.
Nice.
Go ahead,
Is it
Shereese.
me? Okay.
Yeah.
I've missed the clockwise. I don't know the way we're going. Sorry. Hello. Hi, I'm Shereese. I am the Sci-Fi Savage, and I am super excited about today's conversation because I'm obsessed with Star Trek, but I also just watched Battlestar Galactica for the first time 2 years ago. So, I can't wait to get into this.
My name's Gannon. I just run a YouTube channel by the same name. Really excited to talk about Battlestar. I think it might be my second favorite science fiction television series besides Star Trek I've ever watched. I think it's great.
And I'm Elisa of Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, the behind-the-scenes half of it. I wouldn't even say half, like a quarter. I fund the thing. I don't know.
And we both just watched it for the first time this summer, so we're very fresh on this.
Very fresh.
I think I had never watched it when it first came out because sci-fi in the early 2000s just kind of died for me. I could never get into Earth Final Conflict. I could never get into Andromeda. I stopped watching Enterprise to my own detriment after like the first half of season 1 because, I mean, let's be honest, it didn't have a great start, and then it got good. So
I still
this
haven't
was like,
finished season 1 of Enterprise. So
really? Have you
No.
Have you
I
watched
just
any of
did
the
it.
rest of it after? Or?
I couldn't do it. But
Go
a
to-
friend of mine told me it gets better, and she said she
It
pushed
does.
through, and so I thought
Go to
maybe I
season
could give it
3.
another chance.
Go
Yeah,
to
I was gonna
season
say
3.
start season 3 and 4, and really like you've got to start at the end of season 2.
Yep.
The final
Yeah.
episode of season 2 leads into season 3. Kind of like Battlestar Galactica, where if you're not paying attention in the 04, you've got to actually watch the 3-episode miniseries before you watch Battlestar Galactica, or else you end up on season 1, episode 1 with a previously on wondering what you missed.
Which
Did
is
you get to
exactly what
catch
I did. That's exactly what I did. I was like previously on. And I
Yeah,
was
we
like,
waited
what's
till
going
after
on?
season 1 to actually watch it. Did you catch up on it, Gannon?
I didn't watch it. I still haven't watched it. I've been procrastinating. When I first was watching Battlestar Galactica, I assumed that they were just picking off where like the one from the 80s left off, but it was just updated.
Okay.
So that's what I assumed at the time. I had no idea that there was anything besides like 04 and the 80s show.
It
Yeah,
did
it-
help to fill in some of the stuff from season 1, but they could have condensed it to like half of what it was.
It was quite long, but I mean, you get the whole why they are where they are. You see that scene that you see like 1,000 times reused in the show, where like the explosions and Gaius and Six and stuff at his place, and it's just you get to see the fall of Caprica and a few of the other planets.
Hi, Laura.
Hi there.
You get to see Six's, we call them bionic legs,
Mm.
because they like magically
Go
protected Gaia
forever.
from death, but did not protect Six. So it's still a mystery. Like to this day, we don't understand the physics of that. But
All right, so the first big question that we hit on for all of these comparisons: what makes Battlestar Galactica worth watching as a franchise?
I think that Battlestar Galactica is worth watching just because I think that it takes some of my favorite elements that I appreciate from Trek, and then other science fiction shows as well, and it just delivers the most perfect drama in space. That's aboard a single fleet of starships running away from a Cybertronic enemy that is really elusive, really smart, and then also has a lot of mystery to them that you learn with each coming episode, and how the humans and their running from their own creation and how they learn more about each other's identity throughout the process. It's a really great show with great characters. And it's just a great drama, pure and simple.
I think it's one of the most perfect shows ever written. And because of the storyline. Now, there are a few exceptions to the rule in all of BSG. There's the episode with like the casino or whatever that was, the black market episode that was terrible. And then I also really hated the
Yeah.
story. I thought that was also terrible personally. But every other episode was fantastic. And the thing that blew me away is that season 1 was phenomenal. How many shows can say season 1 is phenomenal? Like the whole
That's
point of
true.
season 1 is to figure out what you're trying to talk about for the rest of the seasons where it starts to get good. But season 1 was already phenomenal. The storyline was amazing. The character arcs were so interesting. And I just think from a storytelling perspective, it kept me engaged. It kept me interested. There was lots of mystery. And I definitely was binge watching it because I just had to know who was a Cylon and what was going to happen. And not a lot of shows have that either, where you have to know what's going to happen in the very next episode after every episode. So I think it was really special for that reason, for those reasons.
I think one of the ways I really liked it, and one of the things that I like about it, before they got almost to sign on, he said, I only have one rule: no bumpy headed aliens. And actually, it came really down to no aliens whatsoever. And so it let us look at the human condition from two very distinct standpoints, or three if you count like the observer. But you get sort of the suffering and fear but at the same time, love and supportiveness of the Galactica fleet. But you also get sort of the figuring out human emotion from the Cylons. And so that's the sort of stuff I like to really sink my teeth into, is to sort of look at it gives you a chance to look at the human condition, like Star Trek does with showing present day issues and videos like they did recently where they played a video of January 6th. I feel like the human drama helps connect us to it better. And I think it plays on a lot of emotions that sci-fi brings out in you, but in a more narrow focus. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's why I like it so much.
No, it is. It is more narrowly focused than like Star Trek, where like every week you don't know what the topic you are getting into is going to be. It could be anything, even if it's part of an arc. Yeah, with Battlestar, it's definitely that pretty narrow focus of how are we going to save ourselves? How are we going to get to Earth and then second Earth and
Also,
all
I just
that.
wanted to add, you guys know I'm a spiritual person, and the reason DS9 is my favorite show is because they did work some religion into it. And I really like how Battlestar Galactica plays religion versus faith, and that those are two very different things that look very different. And so I feel like it took a little bit of what DS9 tried to do with this whole like spiritual versus agnostic, I guess, but it was really that everyone had a faith. It was just where was it and what was it in? Like there was even people who just had faith in each other or had faith in the captain or the admiral, but everyone had to have some sort of faith.
So I'll use that as a segue to one of the questions we had. How do religious depictions in Battlestar compare to, say, the Bajoran beliefs in DS9?
Well, I'll go. I think DS9 was about religion. It was focused more on the practices and like the communal nature of it. We got to see Kira doing a grief ritual. We get to see sort of them act in that function. Whereas on Battlestar, they don't go to church. They're not really seen practicing a religion. It's more that they talk about it and that they have scripture about it, and that scripture holds them together as a historical document, whether or not it is. And I think there was a stronger sense of unity from both sides. Like the Christian Cylons were definitely like, we are Christian Cylons, you can't do anything about that. Whereas the ones who had more faith in the Greek gods, it was just like an accepted thing on the ship. Like everyone has to believe the same thing. And it was interesting to see the levels of that and where the people went when they rejected it.
Well, we did see one kind of church. I don't think they would call it church. I think they called it temple, but we did see one church gathering when they were living on the planet under Cylon rule. And they were like, licking the Kamala, and they kind of had these drug induced visions. So I definitely think religion was weaved in a lot of different ways into Battlestar Galactica. I like how you said it was about faith, because I think you're right. There was a lot of, everybody had faith in something, even if it was in their own selves and their own strengths. Of the heart. Yes.
The heart.
So yeah, I agree. I can't speak too much on DS9 though, because I'm not like the DS9 expert. But I will say the religion actually made me a bit uncomfortable in Battlestar Galactica, because I am a person of faith, and it just creeped me out the way that Six was always connecting sex with God. Just was creepy. But taking a step back from that, there was a whole lot more of religion and spirituality than just that. That just was like brought up every other episode. But yeah, there was the Greek religions. There was whatever was going on with Starbuck. There was a lot of talk about destiny versus choices. And I really like how the Cylons had their own culture, even though they were created to be just automatons. I thought that was a really interesting twist. It's kind of like Borg, but what if Borg weren't just like mindless robots? What if Borg were exactly like humans? And you really couldn't distinguish. And I felt like that was actually what BSG was about. It was about, what does it mean to be human? It was like the story of Data, right? What does it mean to be human? That's kind of how I saw it.
I thought that in DS9, the Bajoran faith was probably the best example of what we've seen for religious practice among the people in Star Trek. But I didn't feel like it took over DS9 the way that Battlestar Galactica's faiths in God and the plan and the gods and whatever else they all practiced. That was just ingrained within, embedded within the whole show. Like it made this culture. So I didn't feel as much of an impact from the Bajorans, I guess. I will say that religious extremists are religious extremists, no matter what race or group or whoever.
Religion? Yeah, no matter the religion.
Yeah. Unfortunately. I mean, it'd be nice if it was thought to do good, but
I also think for some people, faith can sustain you where food and water cannot. It can give you that extra day or extra week of like, if this is how I'm meant to go down, then I'm just going to follow the path. But in the meantime, I'm looking for food, I'm looking for water. But, having that little sense of something else to believe in can help sustain you.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like Star Trek, like it was never supposed to be a show about religion. It was always a flavor of the week type of show. It was always about getting a taste of the galaxies, right? The quadrants, the different races, different cultures. So I think their efforts were put more on just a little touch of different kinds of experiences and backgrounds, which is totally, totally different from something like Battlestar Galactica, which was a serial, right? Which had full arcs, which had an end point they were trying to get to. So they were able to go deeper in specific topics because they knew how the characters were going to transform. But when you have a monster of the week type show, you have to reset everything at the end of the episodes. You have to kind of contain how your arcs go. And I think that also can affect what we see on screen. Not that it's bad, because I love me some Star Trek, but I think that kind of lends itself to a certain kind of storytelling.
So in that same vein of religion, Shereese had mentioned Starbuck and whatever's going on there. Was Kara Thrace always an angel or only after she died?
I'd like to believe that she always was, just based on the final scene of the show. It's kind of implied that like Gaius Baltar as well is an angel. I mean, it's kind of mentioned so many times by Six, I believe. But then it's kind of confirmed in the final scene. And if Gaius Baltar was an angel all throughout the show and then survived to see the next iteration of mankind, I probably think that Kara Thrace was an angel all along. But until she found some version of faith after she died, it had like a death experience. That was the only point in time where she was willing to really entertain the fact that she was anything other than a soldier.
That's interesting. Your interpretation was that Gaius was an angel all along? Because my interpretation was that there was Gaius and there was Six, like the physical ones you can touch, and then there was a second set that was Gaius and was Six. That
was my impression as well.
Yeah, because they were interacting with each other.
In a way, I mean, the thing is that my firm belief is that there really isn't a true separation between the humans and the Cylons. Like if this is a perpetuating cycle where you have humankind in a state where they create the robotic Cylons and they overthrow them, and they constantly talk about how this story repeats over and over again with different versions. I just think that the humans and the Cylons are kind of the same race at this point. I would like to believe that Gaius Baltar, any version of him that we saw, is probably in some Cylon lineage if this is a perpetuating story.
For a while there, like seasons 1 and 2, I was starting to feel like, all right, we're going to find that the Cylons aren't actually any different than humans. They're just humans that one group of humans has started to look down to as like a lower class, and it's become like class warfare. But then we find out that they really are different, and they can like regenerate and all this stuff. But
So I hadn't thought of Kara Thrace as an angel until I read through the questions. Like having an awareness of it. So I don't know. The human arc piece of it was so real that the angel thing was like really believable to me. And so I hadn't even thought that she would be an angel the entire time and then just carry out this mission. So that's a really interesting.
But then the question is, was her ship also an angel? I don't know. I feel like there's some plot holes in that.
It is a paradox that if you think about it too hard, your brain's gonna implode.
Okay. Because that was my thing, is I was like, oh, she's an angel and all that. I was like, okay, but her ship came back as a physical ship that was exactly like the ship that left but untouched. And then she finds her ship crashed and herself and her dog tags like as a physical skeleton. Like there was a physical Kara Thrace aside from the, intangible, I guess, Kara Thrace who can choose to disappear on it at will. So I don't know. I think that was one part of the show that I wished they actually would have gone harder into the religion there. I would have loved more understanding about what was going on with Kara, because they mentioned it like once with that, what was that thing she was trying to get, that like spear or something? They kind of were mentioning it then.
Yes.
yeah,
Do you remember they had that episode? Yeah, you remember that episode?
Apollo.
There it is. Do you remember that episode where she did something and they were like suddenly in a new place? And you were like, whoa, they're like, I think she put the arrow where it was supposed to go and they all were something like mystical. And I was like, okay. And then they never did that again. And then at the end, they're like, she's an angel. I was like, oh, I kind of wanted more through lines. So that way, when they said that at the end, I'd be like, of course, that's what it was, which was not my reaction. I was just like so confused. I was as confused as Starbuck was.
Yeah, I want to believe that she was an angel the whole time, and there's a little bit of that Voyager future, or is it? Yeah, Future's End, where like C leads to A leads to B, kind of stuff going on with her. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with the simple answer. She was always an angel. She just didn't know it. So again, you were talking a lot about Gaius there in your answer. What character is Gaius Baltar most similar to in Star Trek?
Dukat.
Yes!
He
Thank
just
you.
is always on some fuck shit. Always, 100% of the time. If there's ever any time where we can just chill and have a fun scene in the cafeteria, Gaius has got to go in there and throw some mustard gas and, praise the Cylons. He could never just calm down and maybe have a cup of coffee. it's always 0 to 100 with this guy. He's a constant antagonist to the point where, like, they'll spend half of an episode making you like and sympathize with him, and then he turns right back around and just starts perpetuating stuff that annoys you with him again and makes him the antagonist. Same with Ducat.
Yep, for sure. They're both masters at self-preservation. And so whatever kind of cockroachy thing they can jump and evolve and survive to, they will take it. And they will take all of the benefits that go with it. So absolutely Gul Dukat.
I'm going Harry Mudd.
Why is that?
Because they're both cockroaches that no matter what you do, they keep coming back. And they're somewhat charming despite being complete and utter assholes.
I think
Go ahead,
Gul Dukat
Shereese.
is a good shout, but for me, and listen to how I say it because it's important, Vedic win.
Okay.
Not Kai win, but Vedic win. Still at this point of the crossroads of wanting to be the savior and wanting to be like the hero, I guess, bureaucratically. But this idea of not really knowing that they want power, but not really knowing how to go and get it, I guess, without help. He just looks like Bashir.
He does.
I thought it
Kept
was
calling it not
Bashir
Yeah,
for so
not-
long. And then my friends were like, that is not the same actor. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it is. And then they showed me a side by side and I could not tell them apart.
Like, how can there be two of them?
Right? I mean, similar build, the similar British accent.
Yep.
They have the same
but,
face.
but he is a Star Trek actor. Picard's
is.
dad from season 2.
I did not know that until you posted it in the chat, Dustin. That actually kind of blew my mind.
I was so excited when I saw him in it. I was like, it's Gaius. Every time I see Gaius, I'm like, it's Gaius.
Has he
I'll
done
just
any other roles that are like notable besides those two that I would know?
In Star Trek?
No, just
No.
this
Not
actor
Star
in
Trek.
general.
I don't know.
He's been in Midsummer Murder, which is a show I love, but I don't know if you would call that notable. And he was in it as his own twin, so I got to see double Gaius, which was fun.
No, have not seen Midsummer Murder, but
I can't
perhaps
remember.
I should check it out.
I can't remember what chick flick turned TV show he was big on. Was it Bridget Jones's Diary? I think that's it. I think that was like his first big break. Did
Oh,
you have
yeah. Yes. He was the gay best friend
Nice.
who was always like, I made one album and it get me laid for the next 10 years, so I'm never making another or something like that. It was a great
Did you-
character.
have an answer you were holding on to for who he's most similar to, Shereese?
I did not have an answer I was holding on to, but I'll go with
okay.
Gul Dukat.
Okay.
The thing I love about Gaius, which is a hard sentence to say because he's dirt, is he's extremely consistent, right? Like a friend of mine, when we started watching her, the way she watches the show is every time she does a rewatch, she rewatches it from one character's point of view. So she was like, this
Cool.
time I'm watching the entire show through Gaius's point of view, for example. And she said every decision he makes sense to Gaius. And you're like, yeah, he's extremely consistent.
So I'll take this opportunity since we
he was in
compared
Eureka.
him to, he played in Picard. The other major Star Trek and crossover actors we had here, the role of Terry Foster was Commander Landry in the first couple episodes of Discovery before she got torn apart by the tardigrade. Played by Rekha Sharma.
Yes. I think.
Leoben, who was Captain Rayner in the last season of Discovery, by Callum Keith Rennie. I don't know which one I like him better as.
Leoben. Because we got to see a couple versions of Leoben.
Yes.
So it's not really fair. We got to see him play 3 people versus like 1 person.
Leoben was a richer character than Captain Rayner, though. I feel like Captain Rayner kind of had a pretty flat arc. I mean, I like that he's a bit of an antagonist to the cast, but definitely Leoben.
Then you got Brother Cavill, the late great Dean Stockwell, who we talked a lot about last week with Quantum Leap. He played Colonel Grat in Enterprise. And then we had Simon, who wasn't in so many of the episodes. Where is my picture of him? But he was in multiple pieces of Trek. The most notable and longest thing he did was he was one of the Equinox crew members in Voyager.
Yes,
Crewman
yes.
Lessing.
Oh.
He was also in Insurrection and a couple other things just as background actor. And I don't know why I have a picture of him somewhere.
Dean
I can't find
Stockwell
it.
does indeed hold the worlds together.
It's like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon,
Yes.
but it's like the 2 degrees of Stockwell.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the only major sci-fi piece he was never in was Star Wars.
But were he still alive, he probably would be. He'd be in one of these million series.
Probably.
I don't see why not. Like, just for the fans to be like, oh my gosh, like.
Romo Lampkin was Icheb's father, played by Mark Shepard. And the last one is the background here behind us, which I don't actually have a thing of. Michelle Forbes played Admiral Kane and Ro Laren in TNG.
Which one of those do you like better?
Easily Ro Laren, just because of the amount of content. I mean, you only get 2 episodes of her in Battlestar.
I like her attitude in Battlestar, though. Like, she really carries that I will shoot you in the face and then go have lunch kind of attitude.
I will shoot you in the face during lunch.
Yeah.
And continue my lunch
Yes.
attitude. 100%. I mean, that role was like so believable. It just all the characters are so believable. And I thought she was terrifying as the admiral.
Yeah, she fits right in with like Starfleet Admiralty.
Can I point out a stupid comparison?
Yeah.
It just hit me so hard. So, if you remember, I should have written down the name of the episode. The anti-Cylon protesters take the bar hostage. It's when Lee gets shot and
Oh,
Billy
yeah.
gets
Yep.
killed.
Yeah. I think
the
that's
woman,
the Black Market episode.
yeah, the woman in charge of that is named Sesha, which I keep wanting to say Seska.
Seska.
Oh no.
And they're both revolutionaries who are fighting against the group that they're with. And I thought that was kind of funny too. Uh-oh. Is the picture of Simon in the other room?
Here she is. Wait. Here she is. This is new, our very new
Oh,
to
wow.
our collection and edition that we found this summer.
What does it say?
Seska.
Little circles.
What do the little quote bubbles say?
Oh, just that they're exclusive.
Generic stuff.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
okay.
from the
Nothing
It doesn't have a
episode.
catchphrase or something.
Maneuvers.
don't think
no.
so.
It
Oh.
should.
I
It
feel a little
should.
ripped off, Fox. You could have done that extra little bit of something special, but it's still cool.
No.
Imagine being an actor on one of these shows and then being turned into an action figure. That's
It's
wild.
pretty epic.
That'd be
That's totally
awesome.
wild. I'd buy
She
it.
comes
I'd
with
buy my action figure.
accessories. Yes.
Are her
It's been in the
accessories
box.
weapons and spy tools?
They are. So she's got
She does
a
come with a Cardassian base.
transporter module, DNA tissue sampler, Kazon interrogation device,
Oh.
and a Kazon communicator.
She
There's a
mean
bonus
business.
Cardassian action base. Bonus. Woo. And it's still in the case. Like, I think this is from 1997.
Wow.
New but safe.
Wild.
This is like going to our child when we're leaving her. Sealed Seska doll from 1997.
So the
She's
other
going to be like, thanks, guys. I kind of wanted
Right.
cash, but this is great.
The other big obvious Trek tie-in,
Mhm.
this series recreated by Ronald D. Moore and showrun.
Rock on.
I really think the tags at the end of the credits is what kept me watching it when I was watching it the first time around.
Speaking of credits, did anybody else always watch the opening credits to see how many people are left or are born or whatever?
I always watch it just because the opening theme song is so good.
I wanted
But
to
I,
talk to
I
you.
did enjoy the live update of how many people were a part of the fleet still. That was cool.
When Grace says that Seska's catchphrase is telling Chakotay it's his baby. Well done.
I hate intros. Like I just hate them because I just want to get to the story. But the intro was good, right? But I watched this entire show. We watched it. This was back in the days of Clubhouse, when we were on lockdown and couldn't exit our homes. So I had a group of friends from all over the world, and we were watching the show together. And a bunch of people had
cool.
seen it before, and a handful of us had never seen it. So we were watching it 1 week at a time, like it was 1997, right? We were watching it like it's a long time ago, and we were not allowed to Google or anything because it would give us spoilers. So we would watch the episode, and afterwards we would all have our theories of who we thought were Cylons. So the only reason I watched the intro is because whenever I'm watching with my friends, they all love the intro. So I have to sit there patiently and watch it. But typically I just hit skip, like go, keep going to the story. But the intro was very cool. I never paid attention. I just listened to the music. And then I was like, I want to see the show, Although I will say there was a whole season where they didn't reveal any Cylons. And that was very frustrating. Because after every call, I'd be like, who the freak's the Cylon? Why did they tell us?
So we had that as a question. Who has the craziest Cylon reveal? Who faced the most hardships when they found out they were a Cylon?
Okay, so the craziest Cylon reveal, in my opinion, was the Chief. The Chief is just like, you really don't want it to happen because that just makes all his crazy ass hardships up to this point, makes him question his existence even more. But the person who faced the most hardships, I think, was what's his face? The second in command,
Ty.
Ty.
Yeah.
Colonel Ty. Yeah, he sacrificed so much, and then he found out he was a Cylon, and he realized he didn't have to sacrifice it. But then they kind of made a Band-Aid on it by also making his wife a Cylon, and kind of giving them that opportunity to be together again. But at the time, it was like, you really didn't have to kill your wife type situation.
I never saw Saul Ty as a Cylon at all.
No.
That was the biggest surprise to me. I'm like, what?
See,
And he
I
was
was
such a Cylon
He's
hater.
too much of a dink.
Yeah.
Like, yes, right? Like you
You
can't
are
be
your
that high
biggest
in
enemy.
command.
It's crazy. You
Absolutely.
are your biggest enemy. Like you have been this whole time.
Mhm.
It's insane.
He was the biggest Cylon hater. And you got to wonder, like, what does that do to a person? Do you remember there's this episode of Star Trek TNG, I think it's called Inheritance, where Data meets his mom, and mom's married, and her husband's all like, I don't like androids. I don't trust androids and all of this. And then mom turns out to be an android, and it's like, well, let's keep it a big secret because, she won't be accepted. But like, what if he were the android, which would make no sense in this scenario. But like comparing it to Ty, right? If you become the thing that you absolutely hate, how does that mess with your mind, right? Now you're like, wait a minute, all your beliefs are uprooted. I don't know. Super interesting.
I was more surprised by D.
By D not being a Cylon?
Being a Cylon, isn't
No, I
She-
think you mean what's her face? The like PR person.
Oh,
Who's a
yes,
Cylon.
yes, you're right. The one that
Tori.
Yeah.
yeah, okay, sorry.
Dude, it's crazy how she's like a major bitch in both sci-fi shows that I know her from. She's just like an asshole.
Maybe she's got a talent.
Right?
She's just good at playing those roles.
I think Ty was the most surprising for me because he was such a big Cylon hater. I was like, oh, now what? But I think the person who faced the most hardships, yeah,
Boomer.
Tyrell did, Boomer did, but I think
Boomer.
it was actually, Starbuck's
Athena.
husband, because I don't know. I just feel like he got nothing out of anything.
You're right.
I'm
You're-
I'm
It's
blanking on his name
true.
though. What's this guy's name?
What is his name?
Come on.
I'm looking at
She
pictures
goes
of all of
back for
them.
him. It's like the
Samuel
ultimate-
Anders.
That's
Yes,
Anders.
Anders.
Sam.
Anders.
Yes.
Yeah, Sam, I feel like
Good point.
he got the short end of every stick. Boomer, even though Boomer had a lot going on, but Boomer kind of had her ups and her downs, right? She got to be with the person she loved, but then not really, but then also died, but then came back to life. But then Athena got to have a baby. So it was like they had a very tumultuous experience, but they had some positives as well. But Sam, I just feel like he didn't get any good thing out of being a human or a Cylon.
That must have been really tough for some of these actors that played multiple versions of the same character if you're playing both Athena and Boomer and they have completely different motivations.
So masterful though, because you felt like
Yes.
Athena and Boomer were different people.
Absolutely.
With all the talk about Ty, so fun fact, the first time I heard him, I'm like, oh my God, where have I seen this person? It's not that I had seen him anywhere. He is at the very beginning of two of the biggest video games in the history of ever. He's right there at the beginning
Pac-Man?
of
Metal Gear Solid.
Fallout
Mario
New Vegas.
Brothers. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the first face you see in Fallout New Vegas, and it's that distinctive voice. And then in another Bethesda game, Skyrim, he is General Tellius, and he's the first one that has you put your head on the block.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And they one of the really cool things is they definitely modeled the characters after him. They look almost exactly like
Yes.
him. One
Yes.
just add a mustache, and the other basically looks just like him.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't he have a mustache when him and Adamo did the flashback episode? The way we knew they were 30 years younger is they both had like a little mustache.
Oh, no. Adama's was like pretty big. It was
Yeah,
like a
and then there
cigar
was that-
mustache.
Couple of episodes where he had a mustache, and that was weird. That was,
It was
that did
weird.
not look right on him. So, what's the biggest similarity between Galactica and Star Trek?
I think it takes a lot of inspiration from Star Trek. It really has a heavy emphasis on a chain of command existing in a structure. Kind of does, play on Voyager, how you're a ship surviving in a long period of space travel. There is a lot of similar episodes as well. Like they have their own Drumhead episode. Admiral Adama, I think, plays so much inspiration from Captain Sisko. Like just a really hard ass, takes no bullshit, would actually punch you in the face if you were to tell him no.
If you deserved it.
Picard
Yeah.
never hit me.
But the thing that makes Battlestar Galactica so strong is because it has so much also emphasis on, influencing the masses aboard the fleet. And it has so many aspects of politics, terrorism. There's a lot of drama that comes from that too. So it has a handful of great things that Star Trek doesn't really get time to spend so much time on at one point. And so I really did enjoy like the political coups when they were like fighting over who is going to take control of both Battlestars, who is going to take control over the civilian government, whether they keep on having a presidency or whether it was going to just be a military coup d'etat. And you thought that they were going to go through with it. Like, man, this show is great. It takes a lot of inspiration from Star Trek though. And it's the great parts of Star Trek.
Yeah, I didn't see any I love that. That was helpful because I didn't see any connection other than space. People in space. Other than that, I feel like Star Trek is just such a different vibe. Because nobody's except for Voyager, who's far away from home. You can go back to Earth at any time. Humans still exist. Plus there's aliens. I mean, it just feels like a totally different vibe. It feels to me, it's very pumpkin spice latte is watching Star Trek, right? Like there's comfort and coziness, even when it's dark and intense. It's not going to be dark and intense for seasons and seasons and seasons, right? It's probably like an episode or two, or an arc or two. But Battlestar Galactica to me felt totally different. It felt more like The Expanse, which I know was made afterwards, but it feels more like we're just humans. There's no aliens. We're just humans. And this is all that's left of humanity. And it's very apocalyptic and it's very intense. and serious and challenging and emotionally exhausting if you think about being in the shoes of literally anyone on the show. Yeah, so for me, I didn't see any connection other than people in space.
I'm with you there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot to do with Star Trek. Every once in a while, there's like a preachy episode that does kind of feel classic Trekky, and like they're trying to make a moral
The
point,
moral
and
of the
like,
story.
okay, great. But other than that, yeah, they both are set in space. But other than that, they could not be two more different types of storytelling for the most part.
I don't agree.
You
You
don't
said you
agree?
don't agree?
I do not agree. I
Okay,
think there's
let us know why.
there's more in common than just being in space. I think maybe not DS9, so don't hold me there, but any of the other Star Treks are about we are out here and we have to rely on our crew like they are our family. And we don't have a real choice about that because otherwise the ship doesn't function. And I think it's painted in like one is watercolors and one is like graffiti, but I think they are sort of nurturing this humanist, like we take care of other people not because we like or dislike them, but because they are other people. And I think that sends, in a very faith-based show, I think it shows a very humanist message, which was what Roddenberry was trying to do from the beginning, was to have Star Trek exist in this sort of humanist religious space, I guess. And so I found that to be easily comparable. And then, Ron Moore was around when they were writing the beginnings of Voyager. They had asked him to work on Voyager, and I really feel like this is just, if you took Starfleet military and turned them into Makos, I think it's the same kinds of ships.
I also feel like there's at least one in every 3 episodes, I can make like a real connection to like something in Star Trek. Like they reuse so many tropes. Like for every 2 episodes, they're trying to further the Cylon plot. There's an episode where it really just explores human interaction among the crew. Like there's this one episode where they go on strike for better working conditions. There's another episode where President Roslin leads a really annoying reporter on board, and they kind of pull like a lower decks thing where instead of trying to be super careful about the reporter, they just allow them to report the truth and see that the crew are really passionate about, fighting for mankind's chances. I feel like there's a lot of classic tropes that remind me of episodic Trek.
Okay. So speaking of that union that got started, we had gotten talking about like O'Brien, he's a union man because we've got 2 chiefs of operations in these series.
Yes.
They're big into the union. So we had this question, are the chief of operations on both Battlestar and DS9 the most tortured souls of their respective shows?
100%. I've been waiting for this question all evening. This is probably going to be my favorite question to answer because 1000% Chief O'Brien is the most tortured man in Star Trek. That's why he's the most important man in the Star Trek timeline. Period, hands down. And then you have the chief on Battlestar who
Tyrrell.
Yeah, Chief Tyrrell. The world is asked of him. He has to have these ships going in and out, in and out. He's probably so tired. He does his job, and then on top of this, every other episode, something bad's happening to him, whether he's beefing with somebody, has to get in a fist fight, has to commit domestic violence against Callie, has to have Callie murdered.
I don't know if he had to do that. I don't know if he had to do that. But yes, he did have to watch Boomer get shot in the stomach and die.
I'm just kind of rambling. I didn't mean to put it that way, but you get what I mean. Like, this guy goes through something super traumatic every 3 episodes. And on top of that, you put him through the ringer. You have his like wife. You think there's like an episode where they think they're even cheating on each other. And then Callie is also kind of a mess herself. I remember her crashing out a handful of times. And then at the end, she ends up getting, flushed out in airlock. This guy really cannot win to save his life. And same thing with Chief O'Brien. I mean, Chief O'Brien was literally put into a mine prison for like decades or something. He also had to go to Cardassian Tribunal, got his tooth removed, probably fought in like 5 wars. Maybe 2 of them were fake. Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing that these guys haven't been through. The only other person I could think of that is as tortured as them is Uriel Ventress from Warhammer. This guy spends an entire book sacrificing his whole entire company to, save a planet against space bugs. And then afterwards, they banish him from his Space Marine chapter because he didn't do it the right way. And he has to go to literal hell to complete a trial. And then after he gets done completing the trial, I'm almost done, bear with me, okay? His greatest enemy that he met in hell comes out of hell to go blow up that planet he sacrificed so much to protect. So, yeah, I mean, some of the most tortured characters I could think of in science fiction.
I think you hit
Perfectly
the nail on the
put.
head.
Yeah.
Here, here.
Nothing to add.
All right, so let's go into a fun question here. Where does Doc Coddle get his endless supply of cigarettes?
He sucks dick on Cloud 9.
But they have to run out. I mean, you can only trade so much while you're consuming it, right? And
That's
they're
true.
Can't they
always
just
the
make more?
filtered.
They
He's
can,
always got those.
I don't know about the filters. I
You
feel like
can
you can make
probably,
tobacco, but
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Filters
I
are
agree. I feel like
suspicious.
it's got to be simple growing tobacco in like a back room or something with a little light. And I feel like
The
Doc
filters-
Coddle is one of the most generous people on the ship. Like, he's really there to help people whenever he realistically can. Like, he's smart. He knows he can't help everybody with limited resources. He's a great doctor. But he's probably got so many great relationships with, people from all class systems aboard the ship. I feel like, they'd be willing to help him out with cigarettes or favors.
that sounds fair. That everyone on all of the Galactica ships are funneling their last few cigarettes to him. That sounds totally plausible.
Well, they also talk about using cigarettes as currency. So it could just be that he's given birth to babies and fixing people's trips and falls. And they're all like, take a pack on me. Like, I could see that happening too.
I was going to say by the grace of gods, but
Yeah. They just keep falling into his hand while he's
they
ready
show
to
up in the
smoke it.
supply closet. Endless.
Yes.
Just pull it out and it's just replaced.
What if the cigarettes are Cylons?
Ooh.
I think I'm just putting it together. He is the Dr. Ta'ana of
See,
Battlestar.
I was thinking Bones. And
In
I
that
could see
same vein.
Bones
All right,
smoking
yeah.
a cigarette while practicing medicine. But he also just has that where Bones has more of a Southern gentleman charm. This is more like a Sutherland gentleman giving you like it is.
I feel like Doc Coddle's like the grandpa who's like, get off my lawn. But he's also the one with the best candy at Halloween. Do you know what I mean? He's like,
Yeah.
He's giving out full-size candy bars.
he's the
Yeah.
one guy on the whole
Yes.
block who gives out full-size candy bars.
Yep.
But you better use the walkway when you come to get them. You know what I mean?
Get off my lawn.
Yeah. I like Doc Coddle a lot. What a great
I do
character.
too.
Yes.
The moment he walked in smoking a cigarette, I'm like, I'm gonna like this guy. Like a doctor who knows what he's doing and doesn't give a shit. Like, I'm in. You want to cut off my legs? I'm in. Like, let's do it.
I trust you, buddy. You
Oh
have
man,
that.
that reminds. I completely forgot about that dude who lost his leg. He's such an important character too.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
There's
let's
so
see.
many great
What's his name?
characters from the show.
Felix Gata.
Felix, yeah.
Oh,
That's right,
damn.
Gannon.
I could tell
Oh,
he wasn't
man.
gonna make it through the entire show. At
You
some
could?
point, something was gonna happen to him. I just felt it. He was way too involved, and he was way too much of a perfect side character to die. And his death was really dramatic and cool too. I liked it.
His life was
Yeah.
also very dramatic, which I didn't see coming. I was,
no,
by
me
the
either.
time we get to him having like when they're back on, after the Cylon planet thing, and then they're back on the ship, and you just see like his eyes are all dark and sunken in, and he's just all tortured, and like he literally looks gray. I didn't see any of that coming. That was a real surprise. The directions they took a lot of these characters in.
He literally
No, he really
took over
flipped
the
the
ship.
script.
Like he took over the ship. Like
Yeah.
it was crazy what he was manipulated and also he largely chose to do.
he was in a hard position. So we had this conversation amongst our friends of like, was Gaeta right? Was he right or wrong? Like, because some people, because everybody treated him badly when they got back on the ship, right? And when they had to be like, everyone's forgiven for everything you did on the planet. Like, we're just starting over, right? But before that, everybody was like, you're such a traitor and all this other stuff. But he was like, well, I'm working from the inside to try to save as many as I can. And we had that exact same divide in my sci-fi community when we were talking after that, after one of those episodes where they were like, yeah, he's such a traitor. He deserves to be shot and all this other stuff. And other people were like, but he's like doing as much as he can from the inside. If somebody else was in that position, they might not help at all. Like there's more people alive because he's there than not. And then there's a whole question of secret police and working with them and all of those moral quandaries. I thought that's what made Battlestar Galactica really special, because it makes you think about what does it mean to be human? What part of humanity is actually worth preserving, right? That was all Admiral Kane. It's like, do you want Admiral Kane's version of humanity to survive? Because if that's
Not really.
what we're saving, what's the point? Which was kind of what they said in the episode, right? They were like, if we're just shooting people in the face over lunch because they disagree with us, we can just leave right now. Like this humanity does not need to continue. And what they were doing to Cylons, letting everybody, gang up on one of the sixes because she's not human, so it's okay. That's not something to preserve. Like that, it'd be better for there to be no humankind than for that to be preserved. I thought that was super interesting. And then they layered on it all of these other moral quandaries where you're between a rock and a hard place and anything you choose is challenging. Super interesting. And I love the character arcs. They didn't all go to happy family, right? Some of the arcs just went like Gaeta's or like, what's the son? What's young Adama? Lee, or like Lee's, where you're just like, Lee, what are you doing, buddy? Like all of the arcs, all of the characters changed, but they did not all change to become better, which I thought was a really interesting choice and also very human.
I really do feel like I brought it up earlier, I really do feel like the humans and the Cylons at this point are just like one race, and that this is like a little stunt that is orchestrated by a higher power, similar to DS9 with the prophets, who were clearly orchestrating some type of destiny for Cisco. He was actually created by the prophets to fulfill a destiny. They constantly have a mentioning of a Cylon god who is pretty much orchestrating this event. And then even in the final scene, they kind of imply that God has willed all of this to become so. And then you kind of see so many evidence points towards the end of the show where the Cylons, who were once respawning human clone spies who committed espionage, well, now they have fought the Civil War. They've lost their ability to reproduce. So now they're pretty much as human as everybody else. And then not only this, when it comes to Hilo and
Athena?
Athena, the baby, right? The baby, that is like a human Hera. That's like a human Cylon hybrid, probably the first of many to come on this new Earth that they found. And so then you start having the Cylons and the humans intermix, and now they're all these hybrids to the point where you can't even tell who's human and Cylon anymore. And then they show us the scene 10,000 years in the future where it's a new human civilization, and they're going to start building the robots once again. So that really just tells me that there are so many scenes throughout the series that constantly kind of say everything that they're doing to what they perceive as a Cylon enemy, it's almost like a Blade Runner moment where, sure, they're a replicant, but they're pretty much the same thing as a human. Like they're a sentient being in a human form, and everything that you do to them reflects back on to you. You're actually doing stuff that's unethical, whether you believe it to be a Cylon or not. And then back to Gaeta. Sorry, I'm ramming. This is my last point. Back to Gaeta. You know what I mean? His problem was that he's been fighting this entire war, and all of a sudden, Adama and the higher-ups are getting way too risky. Like they're way too willing to cooperate and work together with the Cylons, and he was just not ready for that. So yeah, there's so many cool stuff like that in the show. I love it.
I do think along the idea of Gaeta and watching him kind of deteriorate, I think an overall theme of Battlestar is who's a diamond, who's a lump of carbon. Like, how do you respond to pressure? Do you rise to the occasion, or does it beat you down? And it's nothing you've done. I've been in situations where both things have happened, where I've been in a ton of pressure and the diamond comes out, and sometimes not so much. And so I feel like watching not just their moral decisions in practice, but also like how they are dealing with all of the situation they found themselves in. And some of them do well, and some of them get drunk an awful lot.
And some of them blow up a whole bunch of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
As far as Gata, to make a Star Trek comparison, I think whether he's right or wrong, I think he's a lot like Admiral Layton from DS9, who took over Earth and tried to stage a coup against the president. But he was doing it for the right reasons. I think he had the right. Gata's in the same place. He's got the right motivations, but he took it way too far.
They both made the same mistake of trying to beat Space Daddy. You know what I mean? Like they were trying, you can't beat Admiral Sisko. You can't do that, or sorry, Captain Sisko. And then on the other hand, you cannot mess with Admiral Adama. You can do anything but that, okay? Once you try to 1v1 Admiral Adama, your goose is cooked. He's way too cool.
You know, we had this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Shereese.
Well, I was going to say we had this conversation about the people living on that planet. And they were kind of split into factions, right? There were the people like Callie who were just going to work and taking care of their baby. Like that's all they were doing, right? Just the people who were just trying to survive, I guess. Then we had the people who were kind of the sympathizers, the people who are working for the secret police with the Cylons. And then we have the people who are working against the Cylons with everything they have within them. Like they are doing whatever they can to fight. And we had this really interesting conversation about which camp would you fall into, knowing who you are, like where would you fall in this scenario? Because all of us would fall somewhere. And it was really interesting because some people were like, I would absolutely be this person, or I would absolutely be in that group, or I would never be in that group. And other people were like, I honestly have no idea. Like I would have to be in that situation and be forced into that scenario to really, to your point, find out what I'm made of. And I don't think any of the choices were like better or worse, but some of them align more with who we really are, and some of them align with who we think we are when everything's perfect, right? So I don't know. I just think that's another thing. That's one of the things I love about Star Trek is the way it makes us think. And Battlestar Galactica, almost every episode made me think like that, which I really love. That's one of the reasons why I'm so like excited about the show, is because it makes you go, huh, there's this episode, but then that also makes me think about me. Like, who am I? Who am I in this world? How am I to people? Yeah.
All right, we have time for just a couple more questions. One of the bigger ones, we had talked about what's the biggest similarity between Battlestar and Trek. What's the biggest difference between Battlestar Galactica and Star Trek?
Sex and violence. There's so much sex and there's so much violence, and there's just not a lot of either of those things as much in Trek. At least in Trek, it's like the dulled down kind of violence, though. Like the Gorn fight and stuff, like the Klingons, not very convincing in TOS. But
no one gets shot in the face in a single episode. No one gets shot in the face.
The violence is very traumatic in the Battlestar Galactica 04. So that in your face, plus all of the couple relations shown on screen for extended periods of time. I mean, like half of that first, like, what was it, the pre-drama or whatever 6-hour thing was just relations. So I just don't know that
it was just Six and Gaius and Gaius and Six
right?
and Six and Gaius.
Exactly. Like we get it. They're into each other.
We get it. They like each other.
That's it.
They like
so,
each other.
Like,
We get
move
it.
on. But I think also that's a sign of the times, right? Like the mid 2000s, like it was in your face. So they pushed it a bit, I think. But Star Trek doesn't necessarily, like, while it explores the human condition, it does it in a
PG-13 way?
Safer way. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely for all audiences.
But it was also coming on at like 6 p.m. in our households versus Battlestar Galactica, which I don't actually know when that came on because I totally missed it when it aired. But it was also. But what time of day it came on? Like, was it like was it like a regular TV thing, or did you have to have cable?
Yeah, it was on the Sci-Fi network.
Sci-Fi.
Okay, so yeah, I completely agree with that. I was gonna say hope versus hopelessness. That would be the difference that I see, because Star Trek is all about, like, the moral of the story is always, let's work together and we can figure this out. And well, sometimes first contact is last contact, you know? But Battlestar Galactica just felt so hopeless. I did not know how that show was going to end because every time the humans got a foothold, they were like blasted away by the Cylons. And so, yeah, it just felt really, really dark and really hopeless and really like regular life versus Star Trek that feels very fantasy and pulls you out of regular life, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
To further the point about violence, Star Trek, first, Battlestar Galactica is a war. It's all war all the time. The Battlestar is a warship. They're always on a warship fighting a war with little fighters, and it always puts them on the plane of borderline. All the actions they commit are teetering on, hey, this is really bad, or hey, we're just kind of doing the right thing here. Whereas Star Trek, it is a utopian society where they are only at war sometimes, and throughout the whole 700 plus episodes, they rarely do war well or correctly or in a scale that's kind of realistic in a space opera. So I think Battlestar Galactica does a really good job at just it being a war.
I want to throw out there that the depiction of spaceflight and how fighters would move and turn is probably done better in Battlestar than any other series. Both Star Trek and Star Wars have this problem where it's basically like air-to-air combat here on Earth, but in space things work so much differently. You don't have to bank and turn.
Go
you
in
can
a straight
just
line
quick
towards
flip.
your enemy.
Everything's on the same axis.
You never stop until you change direction and accelerate in a new direction. And I loved how you could see the Vipers, they'd stop and you'd see the engine, it would just
And they'd be like,
turn on pivot.
and you'd be like,
Because you
those
can do that
FTL
in
drives
space.
blew my mind. The way they just showed up in space.
Mhm.
Why does that still stand up so good?
They
that
never
show
explain-
is so old, and it's still, when you watch it, you're like, wow, it's just as amazing.
Yeah, in general, the CGI holds
Holds up
really,
so well.
really
good.
well.
It's so good. It does not at all look like, how usually it kind of falls apart and you're like, ooh, HDTV did not do you any favors.
Yeah.
But not with Battlestar. It still looks amazing.
The only thing that looks kind of goofy is the animatronic Cylons.
Yes,
their
I
designs
agree there.
are
I
a little
agree
bit
there.
dated. They could be updated, but I mean,
But I feel like they were supposed to look
care
goofy.
about that.
I feel like that was with the Doctor Who reboot, how the Daleks look just like the Daleks from the 60s. I thought that was on purpose. They were supposed to look goofy, but maybe not.
Probably. I just don't know anything about the original series or
Oh,
what they
I
look
was
like
gonna-
in the old one.
I was going to say one of the cheeky things they do on the 03 version of Battlestar is the fighter helmets. If you look at them carefully, they are green, have giant reptile-looking eyes, and meat in the center. So they are, because the Vipers in the 70s version were in fact looked more like a snake than a human being. And so the idea that they changed that over to just illustrating the snake likeness in their helmets, and also that they took most of the character names and turned them into call signs. Like when Richard Hatch was on the 70s version, his character was named Starbuck. There was no Kara Thrace, nothing. It was just Starbuck. There was just Apollo. Whereas they changed it now to give them a little bit more breadth and depth of character. And that I really appreciated.
And it was helpful when we got Boomer to Athena, because that was hard.
I really agree with what Dustin said, though, before about how this might be the most satisfying or most well done spaceflight in any other show, because a lot of people give credit to The Expanse for just how hyper realistic it is with them, suffering from G-force. But it's sometimes the show kind of suffers from it too. Hyper realistic space travel isn't really that fun. Sometimes, I really wish maybe the plot could be spent doing something else than watching 20 to 30 minute footage collectively throughout a whole season of them, flying this really primitive ship at an axis. As much as The Expanse, that's pretty cool. Battlestar, it's just kind of meets it right at the middle, because the space opera, the scale of the fights, the way the ships are flying at all different axes, they're not in the same convenient plane like in Star Trek. It's really good. It's satisfying.
I had an answer for the question that you had asked about comparing the two. And then nearly thereafter, Gannon used the word space opera, and that's when it all came in my head. Star Trek is a space musical. It makes you feel good. The characters are comfortable and easy to get to know. You know who the bad guy is before the shit starts. Like, and when he walks in, it's like, dun, 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 dun. Like everything is kind of telegraphed like that. And then, whereas I think Battlestar is a space opera. There's a lot of high drama. There's a lot of like
Nuance.
when I watch Star Trek, I call it the eyes, because they'll have a conversation and they end it by going, and the eyes on Battlestar were more to direct you to things, where I think the eyes on Star Trek are just there to be dramatic. But overall, tell me I'm wrong. Hotel versus submarine, like one of them is comfortable and fun, and one of them less so. Yes. Yes, exactly. They are Star Trek is a musical.
All right, so we're getting here over time.
Yeah.
The last question I absolutely need to get in terms of sci-fi television, was Battlestar's ending satisfying?
No, next question. You know what? I had a friend who liked it, but actually the friends that I was watching with, right, the ones who had seen it before, they were like, wait till you get to the end. It's so incredible. It's so amazing, right? So they even built it up even more.
No.
And literally when we finished, we looked at each other, the newbies looked at each other and were like, what? So yeah, for me, I'm going to say a hard no.
Oh, I don't think it's an ending that, like, I think Shereese suffered from, like, her friends building up expectations. It's definitely not an ending where somebody should hype it up, like, oh, this is a really good ending or something. I felt like I was satisfied. Is it the best ending we could have got? No, they could have maybe run the show. We could have gotten another season. They could have explained things a lot better. But I think that in terms of science fiction shows that I've seen, which notoriously kind of have really bad endings, I thought it was pretty good. It did have a sense of Deus Ex Machina, or however you say it, where it's just like the plot really comes to a lot of point of convenience. Like everything's, oh, this is all really working out really conveniently for the ending. But like when Admiral Adama and President Roslin were like flying in the little shuttle and she passed away, dude, I almost cried. Like I really did.
Absolutely cried.
Yes.
All of us were like,
dude, I definitely shed a tear or something, because I love both of those characters so much. I think they're my favorite from the show. I'm convinced they're my favorite from the
they're
show,
like the
period.
best couple in space.
They're amazing.
so
They're
great.
both so badass. And when they shared that doobie before she was going to die from cancer, that's when I knew. That's when I knew I loved this show.
You knew it was love.
That's when I knew I loved this show, and that it was just a very special show, and that this relationship, this fictional relationship, is very special to me. But yeah, what the fuck? Like, Lee just got totally fucked the whole series. Like, he didn't get anything out of it. Like, he probably like went to go farm and till the land after the final scene. What are you going to do with your life?
Now he's just wandering around Africa by himself.
You like wasted half of your life, you know, trying to be a commander of Viper pilots, and then after that you had this really scandalous career in politics. Like, you should have at least become some form of leader to the new people on Earth. You know, they need a leader.
The new people on Earth are like primitive people who barely have like cave drawings. Which
yeah. No, sorry, not the new people on Earth, but you know, like just like the remaining party of the Battlestar. Like, they need a leader still.
Right. And Adama was like,
peace out. I'm going off with my space wife into the sunset.
That was Lee's perfect opportunity. Yeah. Because Adama was like, best of luck to all of you. Best wishes. And I'm out. Like, I've been with you for too long. Here's the thing. So you said satisfying, Dustin. I guess what I took when you said satisfying, I took that to mean, did I like it? Which I absolutely did not. But to your point, Gannon, of satisfying, like, did it conclude the story? I do feel like it concluded the story. Like, I felt like the story ended. It didn't feel like it left me on a cliffhanger. And I did like it's all happened before. Like, I like that. Yeah, so I guess it depends on how you define that. But enjoy, I very much did not enjoy that ending.
I agree. It has a lot of problems right from the beginning where like you come into that final episode and within the first couple of minutes, Dean Stockwell just offs himself for out of nowhere for like no good reason.
Forget
Could have
this.
used
like, oh,
most
well,
of the
this is
episode
over.
to explore all of that.
Yeah, the last episode builds it up, and it's like, all right, yeah, they're going to take out the Cylons.
I didn't
and
know
they
what had
do.
happened. Like, I felt like I had missed it. Like, what, the Cylons aren't a threat anymore? What just happened? It was
Yeah,
so
they
abrupt.
just like blow them up, and then they take a random jump somewhere, and it happens to be actual Earth. Yay. And
New
then I
Earth.
feel like, because that's only like the first 15 or 20 minutes of the episode. And then the next 40 minutes is like, if Voyager had given, you always want just that little extra couple of scenes at the end of Voyager to just get you some more closure.
The
But this
ending
is
of
like,
Voyager's
if
bad.
you come to the end of Voyager and then you have one whole episode that's nothing but them on Earth and like everything's rosy, great, but it's too much. You explain way too much of that ending. Like, okay, great, you found Earth, wonderful. That did not need to be a 40-minute stretch.
It was serviceable, but, like, what was God's plan? Was that ever answered? It was always a
The
Carrot
Cylons have a
dangling.
plan.
just,
No.
they have a plan. They have a plan. They've planned this.
It was
God's
in
plan.
the intro of every episode.
Yep.
They have a
Yes.
plan.
Yeah, to the point.
But what
has
was it?
any of you seen the miniseries that came after? Or it wasn't even a miniseries; it was a
So,
mini movie.
I
The
was-
Plan.
Yeah, I was actually gonna
I think
talk
so.
about that in my ending thing. Was
Go ahead.
as soon like 2 weeks after it might be longer, but it felt very short. They had announced Caprica as being like the
I haven't
next.
seen that.
Okay, so Caprica tries in a very bad way to recreate the same kind of grit and I was going to say grimmer, like that's a word.
But it's a prequel, right? 40 years before.
It is. It's how
the
the
events of
Cylons were
Galactica.
invented.
Okay, so it would not give us any further closure.
No,
or
and that was
better
the
ending.
thing was they announced it like very shortly after Battlestar ended. So I was like, great, they're going to go into the new Earth, and if it fits the different gods' like predictions and desires, and what is the relationship with the Cylons now? Have we created? I was looking for all of that in the new series, like
You got
have
none
it
of
be
that.
a sequel and not a prequel. And then I got like 3 episodes into Caprica, and I, who am super patient with confusing sci-fi in the beginning, like I'll figure it out. I will figure never. Like there was a place she could go that wasn't real, that was clubbing, but she was too young. Like it was just weird. And it didn't answer any of the questions. The only real tie is that Adama's father, not Lee, but Adama's father, appears as a civil rights lawyer, as he mentions
Oh,
in
cool.
the show.
Nice.
So that's about the only connect, and the word Cylon.
And the word Cylon.
Yeah, really. That
and the
was all
word
that,
Caprica.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, so the Plan mainly follows Dean Stockwell, where you don't get a ton of him through the series. You get to see all the little things he's doing to set things up behind the scenes.
I actually
it-
like that because there were so many scenes where I was like, what happened to that person? And they were all explaining
Yeah.
the plan.
That was done really well, but I still don't feel like I have much of a better idea what the Cylons' actual plan from God was. After seeing the plan that was supposed to explain the thing that they kept telling us in the series, oh, they have a plan, and you didn't get to it
Thing
in
is,
4 seasons.
When you put it like that, now it seems disappointing. I
it was
didn't
good.
realize that
It's a
it was
really
called
good
The Plan
add-on.
and
I
didn't tell
enjoyed
us-
it a lot.
The one thing is
It
though I got
fills
the
in.
But it doesn't.
impression.
It's worth seeing it to fill in details.
Yes.
But it's not an
It is not
answer to a
it's
question.
not really the answer to the plan.
I got the impression that no Cylon really knew what God really wanted, though. Not a single one of them could actually really say what Cylon God wanted, because I felt like we were always so distant from anything that could explicitly be such an entity. That, like, it was always kind of an open-ended question as to whether that really existed or if that was some kind of cybertronic, induced religion that's why they were having all these hallucinations as Cylons and seeing all this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like the plan was really Cavill's plan, but not everybody was
Yep.
on board with Cavill's plan, which
Yes.
is why
Yeah.
the 3s were all boxed up, which is why 6, was like whatever. This is why all the 7s, I guess, whatever the Sharons were, the Boomer, the Athenas.
8.
Yep.
Oh, 8s, yeah, they were all
8.
like, there was like a civil war within the few Cylons because I think it was Cavill's plan. And do you remember they always worked with like majority rule? So it's just like, well, most of us agree that's the plan. Most of us agree on this. That's the plan. So I really think that was the plan. And at the end, when Cavill was like, dang it, when all the Cylons like turned on them, each other, that's when he was like, well, my plan is not going to work anymore. So I'm out.
That's fair.
So maybe the plan was always Cavill's plan and never God's plan. Because I don't feel like he was a religious
I get
one.
that
He was not a
sense, too.
religious Cylon. Though he was a priest in one of his iterations. He was not a religious Cylon.
Brother Cavill. Just one more thing, and then we're gonna rank the whole series out of 10. I just want the picture I have up here. I think this is one of the things that bothers me about the ending so much. Why would you destroy all your ships and not think you might need them like you did on New Caprica or anything? Just because you blew up the base star of the Cylons doesn't mean you might not need these ships.
Closure.
Yeah.
Extreme closure.
Because aren't the
All right.
Cylons still out there somewhere?
At least some of them, yes. And
'Cause
they
we never
talked
found
about
their-
a home planet at one point.
Yeah, we never found their
and-
home planet. Not that they were looking for their home planet, but their home
Right.
planet exists. Plus, Caprica is still covered with Cylons, isn't it?
One would think.
Yeah.
And all the
At
12
least
planets are still
some.
covered with Cylons?
One would think. All
I
right.
don't know.
So, as is customary here, we usually rank something out of 10 at the end of it. So let's take it as a franchise as a whole. And I am going to give Battlestar Galactica an 8.75, which is a quarter point ahead of what I gave Quantum Leap last week. And I had said Quantum Leap had always been my second favorite sci-fi show after Star Trek. And I think this after seeing it this summer has displaced it for me by just a hair.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Del.
Oh, I wanted to give a short little story, and then I'll give my number. When Ronald Moore came up with that opening with the whole "and they have a plan," when that statement came up, his co-writer was like, "What's the plan? Do we have a plan?" Like, this was a complete shock to his co-showrunner. And they have a plan. Y'all know if you watch the show, I don't give anything a 10. Battlestar Galactica, 10.
Wow.
Wow, Del.
And I don't do that.
It's a
No, you do
masterpiece.
I can't even get Star Trek a 10.
No.
Nope.
No. But Star Trek, that's not a fair comparison. Battlestar Galactica is such a self-contained universe and story. And Star Trek is like bajillions of shows and episodes and movies and everything else. I'll give it a 9. Only, like, I would give it a 10 because I do think it is probably the most perfect show I've ever seen on television. The only reason I can't give it a perfect 10 is because of those gaps, like the ending that doesn't make sense, the gods thing that they never really tied up, the Kara Thrace part. So I think if they tightened up those just a little bit, I'd have no complaints. Oh, and the Black Market episode, which was trash. So just because it wasn't completely perfect, but it's the closest I've seen, I'm going to give it a 9.
That's still far fewer episodes than any Star Trek series
Yeah.
to be disappointed by. So,
Yes.
Gannon?
You know, I had so much fun watching Battlestar. Like, I actually had the time of my life to the point where I was going and telling everybody, like, you need to watch this show. It's
You're the
hilarious.
reason I did.
It's amazing. It's entertaining. I'm going to give it a 9. And also, I really do like the open-ended aspect of the ending, how not everything is answered for you, and a lot of it is up to the viewer's interpretation. And I really do feel like because this is a story that's repeated over and over again, like, we could get another updated Battlestar eventually. Like, I would love to see maybe an Amazon Prime miniseries of a much higher budget in the Battlestar universe. Like, I think Battlestar is really cool.
Yeah, I have to go 9 on this one. I'm not really huge into sci-fi. Like, I'm picky about my sci-fi. So, like, this one introduced me to Trek, and here we have this channel. And it is, like, Trek has permeated my life in a way that I didn't know I needed, I guess. And I'm like, I feel blessed by it. Anyway, but for Battlestar, like, I was so just captured by it. Like, looking at this, what happens if we give humans space travel ways of survival, and how do they outrun an enemy and just stay alive and maintain that humanity. And it was a really realistic depiction of what humans, I think, would do in that kind of a situation. They would turn to violence, they would turn to encounters with each other, and there would be some really deep relationships being evolving and growing. And so I think to have it be such a tight story within 4 seasons that just kept moving right along and kept me engaged, like, definitely 9 out of 10.
All right. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
The
My
music-
final
Oh, go ahead.
my final thought is that I just really do want to give this show credit for how well it did the scenes that involved like political drama, like the election episode, the moment where they were going to put Guy's Baltar in a trial that he was going to, lose outright. Like everybody knew he was going to lose it. But then there was a whole bunch of different propaganda that they used to sway the masses. And it was really cool. I loved that aspect of the show so much.
I just wanted to say the words Bear McCreary because he deserves it.
Yeah.
Like, Justin and I have had conversations about Star Trek music and which we like and which we don't like. I will take this over the beginning of Voyager any day of the week.
No.
I think it's right up there with it.
I like that one.
And also the part that you can't figure, that you don't understand the words in the beginning, is a translation of all of this has happened before and all of this will happen again.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Oh,
Dustin,
wow.
Dustin knows I do my research.
Nice. So
Dude.
say
I
we
love
all.
this. I
So
love
say
the
we
theme
all.
song.
So say we all.
All right. So next week, crew is going to come in here and talk about Doctor Who, and it's not going to be me because I have never seen a single episode of any of the Doctor Who's.
I haven't
So-
seen it since the 80s, so I'm not coming either.
I would like to thank all of my co-hosts for joining me here today, and all of you for watching. So, until next time, live long,